Hi everyone, welcome to our weekly Q&A session, and today it is my pleasure to welcome here our coach Alina. So hi Ali, how are you today?
Hi Veronika, it's so nice to see you. I'm doing good. It's really nice weather finally here, so I'm just looking forward to spending more time outside. What about you?
Yeah, totally, exactly. I'm really happy that it's almost like summer weather today, right? It's almost
Yeah,
there. It's going to be like almost 26 degrees of
yeah,
Celsius, so it is really, really nice and warm. So,
yeah,
and after this long winter, which was gray and muddy, we really need some sunshine.
yeah.
So cool.
So
I think we can start. We have a first question from Annie. And this question is, hello, what can I do? My eyelids are shaking so hard that I can't close them relaxed. I'm so afraid of my eyelids shaking. I can't relax and fall asleep when my eyes are shaking so much. What can I do? I pay attention to my eyelids all the time, and that increases the fear of shaking. I don't want to pay attention to it, but I can't stop paying attention to it. That's a conundrum, right?
yeah, yeah.
So, what do you think, Ali?
Yeah, first of all, I wanted just to say to Ani that I really understand this kind of like this fixation on some aspect of our body. And so sometimes like our brain might be latching onto some particular aspect of whether it's breathing or like eyelids or anything like that, right? And then we might start feeling very uncomfortable noticing it. And so what usually follows that is that we develop a fear of noticing our sensations. And so let's say in that situation, if this kind of like eyelids become kind of center of attention, sometimes that unintentionally can create this sense of like, oh, like losing control over my eyelids because we are focusing so much. It's like similar to when we are doing something without even like thinking about it. The moment when we start thinking about it, it becomes very unnatural to us. We kind of like begin overthink this, right? And so I just want to also say that Annie has like really good awareness of this situation, that it is the kind of like the attention that we give to this aspect is what creates this struggling. Now it can be very paradoxical, like the way to approach this, but since this fear kind of like rests on our desire to not be aware of whatever body sensations we have, paradoxically, to overcome this fear, we need to become comfortable with noticing it, making it okay, the fact that we actually are aware of certain parts of our bodies. And when we are not so much afraid of the mere act of noticing or monitoring, that's when this monitoring tendency has like less and less power over us. So if that, if that's helpful, what I would kind of like invite Annie to consider is that what if it was okay to notice this for now, just seeing it as just like one of those ways our brain tends to latch onto certain things to keep us safe, and instead of seeing that self-monitoring as something that shouldn't be there or something wrong or unfamiliar, to really become more familiar with it and more comfortable with it, even if it's like at first very uncomfortable. So this is something that I wanted just to share, and I hope that Annie will find it helpful.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing. And yeah, I can relate actually to this experience, and I had a very similar one because at some point in my insomnia journey, I felt like if okay, this is going to sound very funny, but or weird, but I felt like if I position my eyes into a certain position, I will fall asleep easier. Like when my eyes are closed and they look up, it will be probably much easier for me to fall asleep than when they are looking like kind of like in the position looking straight, right? I mean, I never in my life I thought like at what positions my eyes are when I'm trying to fall asleep, right? So when we are hyper aroused, when our body is scared, when our brain senses a threat, it can notice so many things, and they almost seem almost like illogical, like
Mhm.
oh my goodness, why am I thinking about this? This is such a nonsense. But when we just see the logic behind it, like, of course, our brain is trying to figure out the sense of it all. And in this sense, it's very natural and normal that we will notice the sounds that are coming from, like, I don't know, from the street, or the light that are just reaching up to our eyes, or just whatever. So, kind of like normalizing this experience, that it's kind of okay, that even I know it doesn't feel comfortable, I know it doesn't feel nice, but it's just a way our brain is trying to help us, is trying to make us survive. And in this sense, it's really nothing strange or unusual. So, Annie, just, I know it's really hard, but try to make yourself as comfortable as possible. Just like Ali said, with noticing what is going on, just being comfortable about noticing, oh, my eyelids are shaking. So it's, when you just bring your focus, your attention to it, your full concentration for a while, for a moment, you may you may realize that it's not so scary, not so bad, because I guess that right now you approach it any like, oh, with resistance. I don't want to experience it. I don't want it. But if you just kind of like relax into this feeling, into this sensation, then even if you start with just a couple of seconds, just a couple of moments, okay, my eyelids shaking, I'm not comfortable, but it is not so bad to experience it. You may later on realize that it will be easier for you to notice it. And when your brain understands, like, oh, Annie doesn't think or doesn't approach it with so much resistance, maybe this is not so bad, this is not so scary, and I don't have to pay attention to this sensation anymore. So I hope this was helpful, Annie, to you. And we got a question from...
And just maybe to add to this is like, because like usually like when this happens, when we fixate on particular aspect, whether it's heart palpitations or eyelids or anything like that, what we really are afraid of is we are afraid of anxiety and its manifestations, right? So when we have some particular struggle, it isn't that it's a new problem. It's not like a new fear that now we have to address it. Actually, beneath all of those is the same mechanism. Once we understand the mechanism, it doesn't really matter what sort of manifestation there is, whether we are kind of focusing on eyelids or whether we are focusing on heart palpitations or anything else. We already know how to approach it because we understand the mechanism. It's the same old mechanism. It's not a new kind of fear that now we need to address additionally. So I just wanted to add this, and because this is very common to experience that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing, Ali. And now we got a question from Chloe. So, hi, Chloe. Hello, coaches. Hope you're doing fine. Yes, thank you. And she's asking, I still envy my surroundings for their effortless sleep, and when they tell me they slept well. Sleep thoughts are still coming. I am still focusing on tiredness, even when I have been recovering still since 2022. Maybe my brain won't forget its insomnia experience. So, what do you think, Ali?
I think there's actually several really good topics brought up by Chloe. First of all, the sleep envy, and I think this is super common, and I think we need to talk more about this, like just to normalize this experience, because a lot of times, like when we see someone else and then we feel bad about like that our sleep experience is not like theirs, right? We feel somehow, I don't know, defected or something is wrong about us. Well, in reality, like when we see that it's actually understandable why we feel this way. So normalizing having this experience in the first place can already put us a little bit at ease. Now, of course, what is also helpful to remind ourselves of is that sleep envy often comes from self-judgment. So whenever there is envy, it's usually a good pointer that possibly somewhere we are not being kind to ourselves. We are not accepting ourselves as we are, and we are being very harsh with ourselves. And so if Chloe knows the principles that we are talking about here, essentially self-kindness is one of the pillars of recovery. It's great to have courage. It's great to have this kind of like accepting mindset, but it's also important to be very self-kind and compassionate in this process, because a lot of things are not going to be the way we would like them to be. And instead of pushing or being hard on ourselves for that, we can actually use this to develop even more loving and accepting relationship with ourselves. And when we feel inside like that we are not enemies to ourselves, I find that usually it gets easier to kind of like shift our focus away from comparing ourselves to others, and rather just focus on our own journey. And that's really the truth. Like the only change we can make is within our own journey. We cannot change the way others sleep. So just knowing that sometimes like sleep envy is a cue to deploy more self-kindness, that could be also like a helpful anchor in this process. And then also she mentioned another topic, which is like the brain won't forget its insomnia experience. And this is actually a really good thing to talk about, because we usually think that recovery is about somehow forgetting that we ever had insomnia, and I don't find it really like realistic expectation, because like for example, I myself, I remember, like I could like name facts, like when it started, how it started. I could talk about my experiences because there is this memory. The problem arises when we think that those memories is somehow still a threat to us. So the brain takes memory as a threat, and this is area where we can work towards unlearning that fear of our own memories. So uh, in recovery, we are not going to actually like erase the memory, because I don't find it like possible. Even like how can you actually like cut out this insomnia experience from like facts of your life? But what we can do is we can actually learn to see the memory of insomnia experience as safe. So whenever our brain brings up a thought about maybe the beginnings of how hard it was when we just started, right? And then there is our initial instinctual reaction is to somehow protect ourselves from it. What if we actually lean into that reaction and just allow ourselves to experience it fully without trying to somehow manipulate or change the way we feel, and just really let ourselves have that reaction and just approach it with curiosity rather than resistance, and see what happens over time. The more we are embracing the experience as it is, over time that memory stops having any sort of um, emotional effect on us, because it becomes like something very normal, very like harmless. That's how we overcome our fear, right? It's not about like forgetting parts of our experience, but it's more about really seeing them in a different way. So I hope that this was helpful to Chloe. What do you think, Veronica?
Yeah, I totally agree. And maybe what I would add, she was also mentioning the sleep thoughts are still coming, and our sleep just takes like almost like 1/3 of our life. So it's very normal to have thoughts about our sleep, and it's really nothing strange and unusual. It's only the relationship we have to these thoughts, right? To these even to these memories, like you mentioned, Ali. So if we take like something casual, something normal, like of course I have thoughts about sleep, of course, even in the light of like this traumatic experience of insomnia, right? It's very normal to have thoughts as a consequence of this experience, right? It's really nothing strange or unusual. But over time, the more this topic becomes casual for us, the more this emotional attachment dissolves, right? So it also like I would say like it was part of my insomnia recovery just to do the certification program, because at some point I felt recovered. I signed up for the certification, and the first week I just didn't sleep because I freaked out. Like, oh my goodness, I have to talk, think about sleep all the time. I have to talk about sleep all the time, and I'm hearing all these stories. And so for the first week, it was completely sleepless because I experienced the speed bump. But as I started to talk more about it, think more about it, and it just it became such a casual, normal topic for me that I can speak about it all the time, from morning till evening, which I do actually, right? So it's very normal to have these thoughts, and right. So I think you are what you're experiencing, Chloe, it's very normal. Normalizing it, not treating it as something weird, something unusual, is going to help you to normalize this experience. And yeah, I hope we have answered your question, Chloe. And other questions are coming in, and one is from Divergent Flyer. I wasn't able to sleep at all last night in anticipation of a big travel day in which I had to get up early. Any advice on how to get through the day on zero sleep? I tried to sleep better, but failed. Oh, this sounds really, really harsh. What do you think, Ali?
Yeah, I would say that first of all, I think the question about like approaching our nights before some important event is super common. I think like almost every talk we talk about it, like every Q&A session, like we have this topic, which is really good. Like we need to sometimes like go over the same principles again and again, because it's normal when there is something important planned before, our hyperarousal might increase. And it's true not just for people who struggle with sleep anxiety and insomnia, but it's also true for people even without that fear. So let's say if there is something very important the next day, like a sport competition or something important presentation, a job interview, an exam, or anything like this, it's understandable that that night might not go as smoothly as any other night. So normalizing this pressure and maybe even attributing some difficulty in sleep to this normal sleep disruption coming from the fact that something is more like something is important to us, that can already reduce the amount of mystery around this experience. And now another thing what was mentioned there was something that, yeah, like I tried to sleep but failed. I know it can feel like failure a lot of times when we kind of like really have high hopes and we really want provide rest to ourselves before this important day, but then if it doesn't happen, we consider it to be a failure. Now the question that I usually like to ask people is that, can we actually fail at something that we cannot control? And really giving it this question a thought to just to understand that what if what something we consider to be a failure actually isn't a failure, actually something like a natural byproduct when there is some pressure going on. And so because we cannot control how much we sleep or when we fall asleep or how deep we sleep, it's not really fair towards ourselves to punish for not having a perfect night. So I would say that maybe this situation even calls for increased self-compassion. Like when things don't go the way we like, being gentle and understanding towards ourselves can really help us through even like a really difficult times. And especially like zero sleep nights, I completely understand. I had this fear myself, and I experienced those zero nights for such a long time. And what I can say to this is that it's okay to not feel great after a zero sleep night. So the point is not to be completely neutral about it. It is when we try to be a certain way after we experience something like this that adds pressure. Then we feel like, oh, if I have a sleepless night, then I'm not allowed to have feelings about it, right? And then in itself creates this struggle and pressure. And so we start thinking like, oh my God, I'm doing something wrong just because I cannot just, brush it off like nothing happened. So what if we approached it differently, to allow ourselves to have feelings, to have preferences about our nights, and not beat ourselves up for not feeling our best. And so when we know that even after we have a sleepless night, we are not going to beat ourselves up for that, suddenly the amount of punishment that we feel that we are going to have after zero night decreases. We no longer feel that, oh my God, it's going to be like a terrible experience where I'm going to beat myself up. Now we look at it from the perspective, yes, I might feel tired and I might not be as productive as I would like it to be, and that's okay. I can still accept myself the way I am. I can still work with what I've got on that day. And so that's why we are becoming friends towards ourselves, and it gets easier to navigate those nights. So I hope that this was helpful for that person.
Absolutely. And maybe what I would just add is, you know, when I had such some events, like big events before, when I was like going through recovery after recovery, and I kind of started to expect that I would not sleep, right? And with this kind of expectation, the pressure for me to sleep just lowered. Because when we go to bed with this mindset, like, I have to sleep, otherwise everything will be terrible, it will be wrong, I will be a disaster, then there's a huge amount of pressure that we put on ourselves. But when I was just kind of, I'm going to get up early because I travel, probably I'm not going to sleep much, if any, it was easier for me. And I just rested there because when I repeat it every Q&A session, but I love it so much. But when we go to bed with the intention to rest, there is we cannot kind of like fail at resting, because what you mentioned, when we go to sleep to bed to sleep, we feel like we have failed if we don't fall asleep within certain amount of time, and consequently we have these thoughts of or emotions of like, oh, disappointment, like we feel like a failure, we feel anger, we feel frustration, and all these kind of things. But this just drops off when we just go to bed to rest. Rest is just rest. We cannot fail at resting, right? Well, of course, we cannot even fail at sleeping because we cannot control whether we fall asleep or not. But when we just rest in bed, okay, I'm going to just lie here and rest, and with my eyes closed. If this is available for us, this is great, right? Because sometimes even the rest is not available when we feel too hyper-aroused, when we feel too anxious. We cannot just lay there quietly. But in this case, just then we work with our emotions, right? Just about to accept it, to allow it to be there without criticism and so on. But so what I wanted to just highlight is that this kind of like anticipation, when we even allow these, okay, this sleep might not happen, the pressure just lifts. And it is maybe more likely that we might sleep, but we cannot do this with this intention. Oh, like even if I anticipate not sleeping, I will maybe sleep, right? And then we are playing with the intention of it. But really having no intention, maybe just preferences, like you, Alina, mentioned, like, okay, I would prefer to sleep, but it's up to my mind, up to my body, whether I do sleep or not. And I just let the night unfold as it wants. So that's what I wanted to
That's really
say.
well said.
Yeah, we have a thank you note from Annie. You're welcome.
And
And the next one is from Lisa. I was doing better for a while, but for the last 2 weeks, the nighttime anxiety has came back, and it is so uncomfortable. It keeps me from feeling sleepy, so my sleep got worse. Any tips? So, what do you think, Ali?
yeah, I would say this is really common, and I'm sorry to hear, Lisa, that you're going through this turbulent period. And this is something what we usually refer to as speed bumps. And speed bumps, if you've been like, watching this channel for a while, you probably know that speed bumps is a natural part of this process. There's the way we unlearn to fear wakefulness does not happen in this kind of like linear fashion, like when it's just, gets better and better and better, and there are no difficult periods. Unfortunately, the learning process has its kind of like ups and downs, and it sounds like you're just navigating this kind of like period when things feel shaky for a while. And what I find helpful is that first of all, maybe change the perspective on the way we look at those turbulences, to see them as something natural and part of this process, and not something that we failed at. That's one kind of like line of work that we can do. And another part is to make it okay that during a speed bump we might have increased hyperarousal, maybe we have more sleep thoughts, we can feel all sorts of like uncomfortable sensations, and just use it as an opportunity to make friends with them or understand them better. And so without resistance, naturally the whole this speed bump starts to kind of like stabilize, and then our experience of the night changes, and so the fear also subsides. So yeah, and also like from your message, it sounds like you also struggle with this like sleepiness dilemma, like when we feel like we haven't slept much, but yet we are not feeling sleepy enough. And for a lot of people it can be very frightening, because we might feel like, oh my god, like I should be sleepy. Usually what happens in those moments is that we think that how sleepy we are means something about like the outcome of sleep itself. While in reality, we might be super sleepy, super tired, and sleep might still take a long while to come. And then there could be another scenario where we are not particularly sleepy, but still somehow sleep happens. So just seeing that things might not be as connected as we think they are, and even if we don't feel sleepy, we never know. Maybe sleep will happen, right? So that can already drop some pressure that we are feeling.
Okay, thank you for sharing, Ali. And I'll go straight to another question. And it's from Purple Canvas. I currently finished 12th and going to college, so I might stay in a hostel. I don't know how to stay there with insomnia, since I only have experience having sleep issues at home. How do we deal with it? So I can answer this one. I don't know how to stay there with insomnia, since I only have experience having sleep issues at home. Okay, of course, this is very common and very normal. And when we travel, we might be very worried and scared and kind of experience this anticipatory insomnia. How my sleep will be before this big event, before I travel. And again, it implies the pressure for us to sleep. And I already talked about it today about rest. It's really helpful when we just reframe it as going to rest, not that we have to sleep, that we need to sleep. Of course, we can prefer sleep, we can keep our preferences, but creating the pressure on ourselves that I have to sleep, this is very counterproductive. But I kind of like from my experience when I started to travel after I was when I was in insomnia recovery, I all I always would start with kind of like normalizing that the first night will be probably sleepless. Again, something I have mentioned today, but we need to understand that when we go somewhere else, our brain is on threat monitoring. And this is very common and normal also for people who don't struggle with sleep, who don't struggle with insomnia. But every time they go to a hotel, the first night they don't sleep. And it just improves like the night after night. And our brain just wants to keep us safe, and that's why our brain is just sending us this hyperarousal, and that's why we don't sleep that much. Secondly, my travels in my insomnia recovery look like I always would bring my, so to say, sleep kit with me. I would have my sleeping pill with me. I would have my eye mask, my earplugs, my meditation music, just whatever. And not always I would use all of these. I just, for me, it was a peace of mind. Gave me peace of mind when I only knew, okay, if in the worst case scenario, I can reach out for some crutch, for some support, because this is a unique situation, and why not to support myself? So really approaching this kind of like crutches with self-kindness, that you are totally allowed to support yourself. And this would be my go. There is one more point that I would always mention by traveling, but I can't remember it now. But I think with only just normalizing the night would be could be bumpy, and having something to support yourself, it's absolutely okay. And maybe maybe the third thing would be befriend wakefulness. Even when I was traveling on holiday the first night, I would sometimes even get up from bed and just walk around the hotel, the resort, and just try to spend the night in a nice way, right? Not trying to sleep, not chasing sleep, because I knew this makes no point. The more I was trying to chase it, the less likely it is I would get any sleep. So fingers crossed for you, Purple Canvas. And let us know how it goes. Maybe we can answer one last question, Ali.
Mhm.
And that would be from Kevin. I believe I have come to comprehend the complexities of insomnia very well, thanks to your videos, Alina. At the same time, we know that insomnia is a paradox. My question: what should you do if you feel the need to really understand insomnia? And how come recovered insomniacs feel they have understood it?
Mhm.
So, what do
Yeah.
you think?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think understanding is not really about like understanding how sleep works and how to make it happen. It's more about just understanding how this whole fear mechanism works. Because really, insomnia is not really about the need to understand sleep itself. It's more about knowing what our brain usually tends to do that feels like that makes it like counterproductive to the actual thing that we want to get in the end. And so understanding the whole idea that insomnia is driven by this like fear of or the desire to avoid wakefulness at night, this is something that can already help us demystify a lot of things. For example, for me, education was like the first helpful step in the right direction, because for some time I didn't know what was actually going on, and I was trying everything. I was trying like to different remedies, ideas, anything that I could like read on the internet. And I didn't know at the time that I was actually kind of like reinforcing this idea that there is something that I need to protect myself from. And so all my attention went on sleep, which paradoxically made it even more elusive. So as much as I try to solve insomnia by trying harder to sleep, the more it was like my sleep was like slipping away from me. And so that's why like the first stage was actually understanding the kind of like a loss of insomnia. And I wouldn't say that like we understand it like perfectly, like to 100%. It's more like, as with any sort of like theory or understanding, it's constantly evolving, it gets refined over and over. And so something that I understood in the beginning, right, got updated and added with more and more nuances, right? So that's also like, it's not a this kind of like definite how to say it, like a finished book or a finished chapter. It's actually like always kind of understanding gets deeper and deeper, and who knows, maybe some in the future there will be more like deeper understanding. But so far I find that this is like sufficient for us to really leave the struggle behind. So I don't know if that answers the question, but I hope it does.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Ali. Uh, Maybe I would just acknowledge that you have the need to really understand, but you don't really have to understand like every nuance of it, every single aspect of it. That it is just a need, it is just a feeling like um, I don't know, like I need to sleep. Now you have the need to really understand. Uh, there we cannot like control all of it 100%ly, like we cannot control sleep, of course, although sometimes we might have this impression that we control sleep, like if I adjust something a little bit here, something a little bit there, and we will sleep, bam, right? No, it doesn't work like here. But those who don't experience insomnia, they might have this impression, right? But the reality is we can't control it. And at the same time, you might have the need to really understand insomnia, but it is just a feeling. It is maybe this kind of like urgency that you have right now, but for but the reality is you don't have to understand really all of it. And maybe next time you may feel like I need to feel hopeful, because this is also one of the aspects of insomnia, what people believe. I need to feel hopeful, I need to feel positive about my insomnia recovery, otherwise I will not understand, or otherwise I will not recover. But it is just our kind of like attention, like your brain has brought attention to this kind of like need at this moment, but it doesn't reflect the reality of overcoming insomnia. I don't know if that makes sense, but I just want to acknowledge like we might have different needs during the course of insomnia recovery, but they don't always reflect the reality of it, right? We don't have to understand sleep 100%. We don't have to understand all of its, like, each aspect of sleep. It just, for our body and brain, some stage, some extent of our understanding is sufficient to feel safe and to let go of any efforts of trying to protect us in these kind of like in unnecessary situations, in these situations, right?
No,
So
that totally makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. I just wanted to add to this that I usually have like this example, like let's think about like babies or puppies or any sort of like just anyone who like doesn't have any idea about the workings of like this, that it still doesn't prevent them from sleeping. So again, like for sleep to happen, no understanding really is needed. Really, we don't need, it's like something that happens naturally. For overcoming fear, some understanding can be supportive, because it's very difficult to practice acceptance when we don't know what is it that we are actually accepting and why. So sometimes I find that, like just knowing like how things work in rough terms, not necessarily like it has to be like perfect and every single detail, but just roughly, just to understand the basics, it can already help us have like see the meaning behind the things that we are doing, the changes that we are making. But other than that, it's really not necessary to completely understand every single aspect of it. So yeah.
Okay. So thank you so much for being here today, Alina. Thank you everybody for your wonderful questions. I will be back next week with the Q&As. And yeah, have everybody great time, and I'll see you next time, Ali. Bye bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye, everyone.